So people have long suffered in silence when it comes to their mental health, but we are getting better, aren't we? You know, there's more openness about it. People are talking about it a bit more online and in person. The problem is that some people are being left behind with this progress. When looking at statistics of death by suicide in the UK, men account for 75% of these deaths. So why? And what can we do about it? So our next speaker has long been passionate about men's health. He's been ambassador for Movember, the campaign, and he is here to tell us about his idea that he's working on. So please welcome Jacob Adams.
How's everyone doing? Good. We'll make that a bit louder in a minute. No man is an island. No man is an island entire of itself. Every man a piece of the continent, a part of the main. These are not my lines. These are John Donne's 16th century poem, and don't worry, the rest of the 7 minutes won't be poetry. He goes on to talk about how a clod of dirt getting washed away by the ocean is just as connected to the mainland as the manor house that sits upon it. In other words, there's those of us in society who are alone, isolated, and may see themselves as broken, but they are just as important as those that apparently have everything going for them. I wonder if you'd agree with that. But there's a stark contrast, is there not? These are not just numbers, they are individuals. Men who are suffering in silence. But they are longing for belonging and connection, aren't we all? You see, loneliness has many different faces, does it not? It is not just about the person being by themselves, but maybe an absence of being able to communicate what's really important to them. In 2020, I went for a lockdown walk around one of the many commons in London, the allocated walk, I'm sure you remember. And this friend, let's call him Jim, I met with him several times, and in one of these conversations, I asked the classic men's health question, which we all learn in mental health first aid, hey, how are you really doing? And for this time, he turned his face away from me, and I'll never forget it. He cried his eyes out, and I had no idea what to do. I'd been working in mental health charities for about 3 or 4 years, and yet I felt completely silent myself. What do I do in this situation? I wonder if you've ever been in a situation like that. You see, loneliness is killing our men. Loneliness is killing our men. Anxiety, depression, is something that Jim faced. He was clinically diagnosed with depression after losing his job and losing a close relationship. Our medical system treats people by medicalizing a human issue instead of socializing it. So what can we do about that? Desmond Tutu speaks about going upstream to the broken bridge rather than constantly trying to intervene and take people out of the river. So what the idea I'm suggesting tonight is not a new one. It is a timeless one, a necessary one. It is not politically motivated, and I don't think I'm going to win many awards for it, but it is an essential one because it's a human one. So if loneliness is a human issue, the response has to be human. So here it is. We can change it, but all we need is a little courage. The root word of courage comes from the Latin and French cor, which means heart. Can you put your hand on your heart? When we want to speak in vulnerability with men, we need to speak from here, not from here. So if all it took was a little courage for me to ask Jim how he was doing, he needed courage to speak vulnerably. So how do we create a society in which vulnerability is the norm? We need to break the stigma. That's obvious, Jacob. Well done. Oh, I could go home now. We need to break the shame. Great. We need to break stereotypes. If 40% of men have never opened up about their mental health, Movember have recently just done a survey for Men's Health Week this week, and they've said that it takes the average man 7 weeks to go and get help. 7 weeks to go and get professional help if they're feeling lost or isolated. That is too long, folks. So here's the solution. If vulnerability is where we need to get to, my suggestion is that we need to do it not outsourced, not in men's talking clubs, which are helpful, but in the settings that they already exist in the pubs, in the darts, in the gyms, in the sports centres, in the schools, in the workplaces. That is where the work needs to happen. So how do we do that? Well, I'm going to show you a very messy slide of my brain and thoughts, and I'm hoping I'm going to illustrate that with a little game. So if you could all put your hands together, not clapping, not yet. And if you could just put your hands together like this. Right, you've already made a connection. Connection means to bind something physical together. So well done, you've already made a connection. In this world, for men, connections can be workplaces or sports clubs and sports centres. Now, if you just clap your hands with me in 3, 2, 1. Brilliant, we've made a relationship. You've all connected at the same time, and it sounds brilliant. Some relationships, I think some of you clapped a bit later than me. Sometimes our relationships aren't always on the same beat. Right, we're going to clap again on 3, 2. You've got to clap when I clap. Okay. 3, 2, 1. I didn't clap. You see, I've broken your trust already, and I apologise. But let's try it again. Trust me now, and it takes time to trust one another. So clap with me. Thank you very much. I haven't finished. I've got a few more minutes left. That illustrates that connection builds relationship. Relationships need trust, and for men, that takes a little bit longer. And if trust in a safe environment creates vulnerability, and vulnerability helps to feel less alone, let's reverse it. We need to start where? We need to start on making connections easy for healthy relationships to happen. So let me give you three examples of where it's going on at the moment that I'm working in as I come to land. 50% of mental health issues happen by the age of 14 in this country. In our schools, we have an opportunity to do preventative work, the Desmond Tutu work, the building bridges work. I went to a school in Reading the other day, and a year 10 student had written to a PSHE teacher and said, "Miss, we need to do something about the macho-ness in our year. We're so competitive and we're bullies. What do we do?" A year 10 student said this. So I went to the school and we spoke to the students, and we had to create a peer-to-peer year 10-led solution. Not something the teachers created, not an app or a special outsourced idea for them. The year 10s have to take that. Let's move on. If a fantastic line was used that it takes a village to raise a child, do we stop at 18? What happens when they get to work? Does the village just stop caring about people? Because one of my friends, Ben, who works in construction, he said to me, "Jacob, we can't show anxiety or depression or loneliness at work because it's a health and safety hazard. If I come to work anxious, they'll send me off site," which is probably fair. You don't want a hazardous work environment. But the reality is, where do those men then have good coping mechanisms? They go elsewhere. But why isn't that happening in the construction site? So we are working there. Because 2 men a day in the construction site in the UK take their lives. 2 a day. And sports clubs, my second language, my other favourite thing in life, besides my wife. Our sports clubs, it's a sad story, don't worry, there's a bit of hope coming in a second. A friend of mine plays hockey, and they had just won the league, and the hockey player that won man of the match in the last game scored a hat-trick. He was 19 years old. They celebrated, and the next morning, unfortunately, he had taken his own life. You see, loneliness is not necessarily always transparent. It's not, as someone had said, about being by yourself. It's often, as Johann Hari says in Lost Connections, the absence of being able to talk about what's really going on. So in these sports clubs, we're building peer-to-peer work that's already going on in training. That stuff's important. So here are there's some palm tree in the first bit, but it says inform. There's 4 things here I'm going to leave you with as we come to land. So, and I'm coming to the end. The first thing you need to do if you're in this room, and I really want you to take this home, is that you need to inform people that you want to do something about it. You want to talk about mental health. You want to talk about loneliness. You need to be what I would call an encourager in your workplace. Have the courage. All you need is a bit of courage. The second thing is you don't have to be one-dimensional. You can do something fun, a positive stag do instead of a messy one. You can do something slightly different in your settings, in your workplaces, in your sports clubs. Be inventive. The third thing is to involve health professionals. You can't do it all by yourself, but sometimes the health system has some wonderful resources. And lastly, you need to do it together. You are not an island. No man is an island. We are all connected. So all we need is a bit of courage. Use your heart, speak from your heart, speak with honesty, speak with hope. And this is what I do for a living. Thank you very much.